Hello, welcome to Faith Call. I'm James, your host, sharing Bible stories and prayers to inspire. Join me and follow. It was a testament to God's care for Ishmael, the son born of human effort, ensuring his descendants would thrive. This promise to Ishmael contrasted with the covenant given to Isaac, and understanding this difference is key to grasping the story's depth. God had declared to Abraham, "Your wife Sarah will bear you a son, and you will call him Isaac. I will establish my covenant with him as an everlasting covenant for his descendants after him." Genesis 17:19. Later, God reaffirmed, "It is through Isaac that your offspring will be reckoned." Genesis 21:12. A covenant, unlike a mere promise, is a sacred, binding relationship between God and his chosen people, a commitment that carries spiritual weight. Through Isaac, God established a unique bond, promising Abraham that his descendants would be a channel of blessing to all nations, a cornerstone of Jewish identity for millennia. Why Isaac and not Ishmael, the firstborn? The answer lies in divine election, a choice rooted not in human merit or birth order, but in God's sovereign will. Ishmael, born through Sarah's plan to use her servant Hagar, was a product of human effort to fulfill God's promise. Isaac, however, was a miracle, born to a 90-year-old Sarah and a 100-year-old Abraham, defying the natural limits of their aging bodies. The covenant was tied to this divine intervention, symbolizing God's power to work beyond human plans. Isaac's line would carry the spiritual legacy, becoming the chosen people through whom God's redemptive history would unfold. This concept of divine election has been a source of pride and resilience for the Jewish people, sustaining them through centuries of persecution, from ancient exiles to modern challenges. Yet, it has also sparked conflict, as the world often resists the idea of a chosen nation. But let's not overlook Ishmael. God's care for him was profound and unwavering. When Abraham, heartbroken at the thought of losing his firstborn, pleaded, "If only Ishmael might live under your blessing," Genesis 17:18, God responded with compassion, "As for Ishmael, I have heard you. Behold, I will bless him and make him fruitful and multiply him exceedingly." Genesis 17:20. This blessing was fulfilled as Ishmael became the father of 12 princes, paralleling the 12 tribes of Israel descended from Isaac's son Jacob. Many see this promise reflected in the rise of Arab nations, whose empires, from the Umayyad Caliphate spanning over 5 million square miles to modern cultural and economic influence, demonstrate the worldly greatness God bestowed upon Ishmael's line. This distinction, Isaac's covenant versus Ishmael's blessing, lies at the heart of historical tensions. For many in Muslim nations, particularly Palestinians, the establishment of Israel in 1948, which displaced over 700,000 people in what they call the Nakba, echoes Hagar and Ishmael's expulsion. The elevation of Isaac's line is seen as a loss of identity, much like Ishmael's displacement by his younger brother. This pain finds voice in radical rhetoric, such as a hadith cited in some Islamic texts, including Hamas's charter, which states, "The final hour will not come unless the Muslims fight against the Jews and kill them until the Jews hide behind a stone or a tree. And a stone or tree will say, 'Muslim, there is a Jew behind me. Come and kill him.'" The text adds a curious detail. All trees will betray the Jews except the boxthorn, a plant tied to Jewish tradition. A few years ago, a Palestinian imam referenced this hadith, suggesting Jews plant boxthorn trees in settlements to hide from this prophecy, a claim that underscores the deep-seated narratives fueling conflict. In the desolate wilderness of Beersheba, roughly 30 miles southwest of Hebron, Hagar and her teenage son Ishmael faced a life-or-death crisis. Cast out from Abraham's camp with only a skin of water, holding perhaps a gallon, enough for a day or two in the scorching desert, they wandered across a barren landscape spanning hundreds of square miles. As their water dwindled and exhaustion set in, Hagar, overcome with despair, placed Ishmael under a shrub, unable to bear the sight of her son's suffering. In this moment of utter hopelessness, God intervened. An angel of the Lord called out, "Do not be afraid, for God has heard the voice of the boy." Genesis 21:17. Miraculously, a well of water appeared, saving their lives. The angel reaffirmed God's promise, "I will make him into a great nation." Genesis 21:18. This divine rescue was not just a physical salvation, but a declaration of Ishmael's enduring legacy. Ishmael's blessing was one of earthly greatness, power, descendants, and territory. He became the father of 12 princes, a parallel to the 12 sons of Jacob, who formed the tribes of Israel through Isaac's line. This promise found fulfillment in the rise of the Arab peoples, whose empires, like the Umayyad Caliphate, once stretched over 5 million square miles from Spain to Central Asia. Their rich culture, marked by advancements in mathematics, astronomy, and poetry, and their global influence, from the spice trade to modern oil economies, reflect the magnitude of God's blessing. Ishmael's descendants embody the wild donkey spirit described in Genesis, fierce, resilient, and independent, thriving against all odds. Yet Ishmael's blessing contrasts with the spiritual covenant given to Isaac. Isaac's line was chosen for a sacred relationship with God, a covenant that promised not just worldly success, but a role in God's redemptive plan for humanity. This distinction lies at the heart of a deeper divide, one that extends beyond the brothers themselves to the sacred texts that tell their story. The Bible and the Quran present differing accounts of Abraham's life, fueling a struggle over spiritual inheritance. In the Bible, Abraham's greatest test of faith comes when God commands him to sacrifice Isaac on Mount Moriah, a moment that seals the covenant through Isaac's line. Genesis 22:1-18. This act of obedience, halted by God's provision of a ram, underscores Isaac's role as the heir of a divine promise, through whom all nations on earth will be blessed. Genesis 22:18. In Islamic tradition, however, the story shifts dramatically. The Quran, while not naming the son Abraham was to sacrifice, is interpreted by Islamic scholars to identify Ishmael as the intended offering. This change is not merely a detail, it's a profound claim to spiritual primacy. By placing Ishmael at the center of this ultimate act of faith, Islam positions him as the true heir, through whose lineage the Prophet Muhammad descends. This narrative frames Abraham and Ishmael as the founders of Mecca, Islam's holiest site, where the Kaaba stands as a testament to their legacy. The Quran presents itself as God's final and corrected revelation, asserting that earlier texts like the Jewish Torah were altered over time, making Islam the authentic continuation of Abraham's faith. This divergence in sacred stories has fueled centuries of conflict, with real and often violent consequences. Nowhere is this more evident than in Jerusalem, where the Temple Mount, spanning about 37 acres, stands as a sacred flashpoint. For Jews, it is the holiest site, the location of the ancient Temple of Solomon, where God's presence dwelt. For Muslims, this same hill, known as the Haram al-Sharif, hosts the Al-Aqsa Mosque and the Dome of the Rock, sacred spaces tied to Muhammad's night journey. The physical overlap of these holy sites symbolizes a deeper struggle, Two faiths claiming the same spiritual heritage, each asserting its story as the true one. Controlling the Temple Mount is not just about land. It's about affirming which narrative holds divine authority. This tension is further illustrated by a striking detail in Islamic tradition, referenced in the Charter of Hamas. A hadith states that in the final hour, Muslims will fight against the Jews until even nature betrays them, with rocks and trees calling out, "Muslim, there is a Jew behind me, come and kill him." All except the boxthorn tree, associated with Jewish tradition, will remain silent. A few years ago, a Palestinian imam cited this hadith, claiming Jews plant boxthorn trees in settlements to hide from this prophecy, a narrative that underscores the depth of mistrust and competing claims to divine favor. What does this mean for us today? For those of us seeking to live out our Christian faith, this story challenges us to wrestle with the mystery of God's choices. Isaac's covenant and Ishmael's blessing show that God's love is expansive, reaching both the chosen and those outside the covenant. In our own lives, we may encounter moments where God's plans seem to favor one path over another, leaving us questioning His fairness. Yet the story of Hagar and Ishmael reminds us that God hears every cry, even in the wilderness. Have you ever felt overlooked or uncertain of your place in God's plan? How did His faithfulness guide you? I, James, would love to hear your reflections in the comments. Your stories can inspire others. This narrative also calls us to pray for peace. The divide between Isaac and Ishmael's descendants persists, but God's promises to both offer hope. In the next chapter, we'll explore a moment of reconciliation that points to a future beyond conflict. If this story has touched your heart, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more insights into Scripture that deepen our faith. Let's continue this journey together, trusting God's promises to bring light to even the most divided paths. At the heart of Jerusalem lies the Temple Mount, a 37-acre plateau revered by millions. Beneath the golden dome of the Rock, one of Islam's holiest mosques, sits the foundation stone, a massive rock imbued with profound significance. In Jewish tradition, this is no ordinary stone. It's considered the spiritual center of the world. It's believed to be the very spot where God formed Adam from the dust, where Abraham prepared to sacrifice Isaac in an act of ultimate faith, and where the Holy of Holies in Solomon's temple once stood, housing the Ark of the Covenant. This stone, roughly 60 feet long and 40 feet wide, is seen as the point where heaven and earth meet, a sacred nexus of divine presence. For Muslims, this same stone tells a different story. Islamic tradition holds that it is the place from which the Prophet Muhammad ascended to heaven during his night journey, a miraculous event described in the Quran. The Dome of the Rock, built in 691 CE, enshrines this stone, marking it as a cornerstone of Islamic faith. Here, we see not just two stories, but two sacred texts colliding at a single point. The Jewish narrative of Isaac's near sacrifice and the Islamic account of Muhammad's ascent occupy the same physical space, creating a profound tension. It's not one history layered atop another. It's a clash of divine claims, each asserting its truth over the same sacred ground. This tension extends to another iconic site, the Western Wall, often called the Wailing Wall. Many assume it's a remnant of the ancient Jewish temple, destroyed in 70 CE, but it's actually the last remaining retaining wall of the Temple Mount complex, stretching about 1,600 feet along the western edge. For Jews, it's the closest they can come to pray at their holiest site, a place of mourning for the lost temple. and hope for its restoration. Each year, millions visit, tucking prayers written on slips of paper into its ancient crevices. For Muslims, this same wall is known as the Buraq Wall, where Muhammad tethered his winged steed, Buraq, before his heavenly ascent. The shared sanctity of this wall underscores the fierce contest over Jerusalem, not just for territory but for control of history itself. It's a battle to determine whose story, Isaac's or Ishmael's, holds the ultimate claim to the most sacred place on earth. This struggle reflects the broader divide between Isaac, the heir of God's covenant, and Ishmael, the recipient of a blessing of worldly greatness. Yet, amidst this conflict, the Bible offers a moment of profound hope. When Abraham died at the age of 175, the text records a remarkable scene. His sons Isaac and Ishmael buried him in the cave of Machpelah, near Mamre, in the field of Ephron. Genesis 25:9. After decades of separation, with no record of contact since Ishmael and Hagar's expulsion, the brothers reunited to honor their father. In that moment, they were not rivals, but simply two sons in mourning, bound by shared loss and love for Abraham. Jewish tradition highlights a subtle but significant detail. The text lists Isaac's name before Ishmael's, despite Ishmael being the elder. This order is seen as a gesture of reconciliation, with Ishmael yielding precedence to Isaac, the covenant heir, signaling acceptance and peace. This act is more than a historical footnote. It's a prophetic sign, rooted in the Jewish principle of Ma'aseh Avot Siman Labanim, meaning the deeds of the fathers are a sign for their children. The burial suggests that reconciliation between Isaac's and Ishmael's descendants is possible, a hope grounded in God's promises to both. While Isaac's line received the spiritual covenant, God never withdrew his blessing from Ishmael, promising to make him a great nation. Genesis 21:18. This dual blessing offers a vision of coexistence, where both peoples, despite their distinct paths, remain Abraham's sons under God's care. In our time, this hope flickers amidst ongoing tensions. The conflict over Jerusalem, exemplified by the Temple Mount and Western Wall, mirrors the ancient divide between Isaac and Ishmael. Yet signs of reconciliation have emerged. In 2020, the Abraham Accords, signed by Israel, the United Arab Emirates, and Bahrain, marked a historic step toward peace, invoking the shared fatherhood of Abraham. This diplomatic breakthrough, named deliberately to echo the unity at Abraham's burial, suggests that acknowledging a common heritage can pave the way for understanding. For those of us reflecting on faith, this story challenges us to see beyond division. The brothers' reunion reminds us that even the deepest wounds can heal. The story of Isaac and Ishmael, separated by a painful expulsion, finds a moment of profound unity at their father Abraham's death. After decades apart, the brothers came together to bury him in the cave of Machpelah, near Mamre, a site about 20 miles south of Jerusalem. This act of mourning, where Isaac and Ishmael stood side by side, echoes through history as a symbol of reconciliation. In our time, this moment finds a striking parallel in a modern diplomatic breakthrough. In 2020, several Arab nations, including the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain, took a bold step by signing peace agreements with Israel, normalizing relations after decades of tension. Spanning a region where conflicts have displaced millions and claimed countless lives, these treaties marked a shift from hostility to dialogue. What's remarkable is their name, the Abraham Accords. This deliberate choice invokes the shared fatherhood of Abraham, acknowledging that Jews and Muslims, despite theological and political differences, trace their origins to the same patriarch. It's a powerful reminder that a common heritage can bridge even the widest divides. This gesture of peace mirrors the unity at Abraham's tomb, where differences were set aside for a shared purpose. The Accords, signed in a world where tensions, such as those with Iran, involving over 100,000 troops in regional conflicts, persist, offer a glimpse of what's possible when nations choose cooperation over confrontation. For those of us reflecting on faith, this modern echo invites us to consider how we, too, can build bridges in our communities. Have you ever witnessed a moment where reconciliation triumphed over division? Share your story in the comments. I, James, would love to hear how God has worked through your life to mend broken bonds. Beyond politics, the story of Isaac and Ishmael finds a deeper resonance in the mystical traditions of both faiths. Jewish Kabbalists and Muslim Sufis, often overlooked in mainstream narratives, have long found common ground in their pursuit of the divine. Unlike debates that seek to prove one religion's supremacy, these mystics focus on a shared goal: dissolving the ego to unite with God. Both Kabbalah and Sufism describe life as a soul's journey, ascending through spiritual realms. Kabbalah's 10 Sephirot, or Sufism's 7 stages of the soul, to draw closer to the divine. They portray God as an infinite, incomprehensible light, and humans as sparks of that light, yearning to return to their source. This language of love, central to both traditions, speaks of a burning desire for God that transcends all earthly divisions, a longing for total union with the Creator. This shared spiritual vocabulary is striking. For example, the Kabbalistic concept of Ein Sof, the infinite God, parallels the Sufi notion of al-Haq, the ultimate truth. Both traditions emphasize humility, surrender, and love as paths to divine connection, often using poetry and metaphor to express the soul's ascent. In the 13th century, Sufi poet Rumi wrote of love as a fire that consumes the self, while Jewish mystic Isaac Luria described the soul's journey as a return to divine unity. These parallels show that when faith becomes personal and spiritual, labels like Jewish or Muslim fade in the light of a shared pursuit. In a sense, these mystics met at Abraham's tomb, recognizing that they sought the same God, the God of their common ancestor. This convergence challenges us to ask, if such unity is possible in the spiritual realm, why has conflict persisted for centuries? The answer lies in the biblical principle that the deeds of the fathers echo in their children, perpetuating both division and the potential for reconciliation. For Christians, the Bible offers a third path, one that transcends human efforts at peace. The Apostle Paul writes, "Christ is our peace, who has made both one and has broken down the dividing wall of hostility." Ephesians 2:14. This verse points to Jesus, not as a mere prophet, but as the definitive solution to human division. Unlike earthly mediators who might favor one side, Jesus creates a new family where identities tied to Isaac or Ishmael, Jew or Arab, lose their power to divide. Through his life, death, and resurrection, Jesus establishes a spiritual kinship that unites all who follow him, regardless of heritage. This new humanity, rooted in faith, begins now in communities where believers from diverse backgrounds live as brothers and sisters, modeling reconciliation amidst a world of conflict. This message is especially poignant for us today. In our own lives, we may encounter divisions within families, communities, or even our own hearts. The story of Isaac and Ishmael and the hope of Christ's reconciliation invites us to seek unity through love and forgiveness. Jesus' command to love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, Matthew 5:44, challenges us to break cycles of hostility, just as he broke the barriers between peoples. The Abraham Accords and the shared language of mystics point to a truth. Reconciliation is possible when we focus on what unites us. Yet Christianity offers a hope that goes beyond human efforts, promising a future where Christ's return will establish lasting peace. The story of Isaac and Ishmael, marked by a painful separation in the deserts of ancient Canaan some 4,000 years ago, reflects a wall of hostility, both historical and spiritual, that has persisted through the ages. This divide, seen today in tensions between Israel and parts of the Muslim world, spans regions covering millions of square miles and affects millions of lives. Yet Christianity offers a radical solution, one that doesn't choose sides between Isaac's descendants, the Jews, or Ishmael's, the Arabs. Instead, it points to Jesus Christ, who, according to the Apostle Paul, is our peace, who has made both one and has broken down the dividing wall of hostility. Ephesians 2:14. This powerful declaration reveals Jesus as the reconciler, creating a new spiritual family where earthly identities, whether Jewish, Arab, or any other, lose their power to divide. In this new family, those who unite with Christ receive an identity that transcends their heritage. No longer defined primarily as descendants of Isaac or Ishmael, they become part of a unified body, bound by faith in a God who loves all his children. This transformation is not just a theological idea, but a lived reality, unfolding in two stages. The first stage begins now, in the present, within the hearts of those who embrace this path. Across the globe, from small churches in Jerusalem to communities in the United States, believers from Jewish and Arab backgrounds are already living as brothers and sisters in faith. In places like Bethlehem, where political tensions have displaced thousands, Christian ministries bring together Jews and Arabs to worship, pray, and serve side by side. These communities, often numbering in the hundreds, demonstrate that reconciliation is possible, even amidst conflict, when faith in Christ becomes the unifying force. This present reconciliation is a foretaste of a greater hope, one that Christianity teaches will be fully realized in the future. The Bible points to the return of Jesus, known as the Second Coming, as the moment when lasting peace will envelop the earth. The Apostle Paul explains that Christ came to create in himself one new humanity out of the two, thus making peace. Ephesians 2:15. This new humanity is not bound by the old divisions of race, nation, or lineage, but is united in a shared identity as God's children. Ancient prophecies in the Old Testament, written centuries before Christ, echo this vision. Isaiah 11:6 paints a vivid picture. The wolf shall dwell with the lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with the young goat. They shall not hurt or destroy in all my holy mountain. This messianic hope envisions a world where hostility ceases and peace reigns under God's rule. Central to this vision is the prophecy of the Prince of Peace, also from Isaiah. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and of peace there will be no end. Isaiah 9:6-7. This title underscores Jesus' mission, not to conquer as an earthly king through wars, but to bring an inner spiritual peace that transforms hearts and communities. His revolutionary teaching, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, Matthew 5:44, challenges the logic of both Jewish and Muslim traditions. which often emphasize loyalty to one's own people. This call to love transcends the cycle of hatred that began with Isaac and Ishmael's separation, offering a path to unity at their father's tomb, much like their reunion to bury Abraham. What does this mean for us today? For those of us seeking to live out our Christian faith, this story invites us to embody Christ's love in a world of division. The reconciliation of Isaac and Ishmael at Abraham's burial, set in a cave in Hebron, about 20 miles from Jerusalem, reminds us that even the deepest rifts can be bridged. In our own lives, we may face conflicts within families, workplaces, or communities that seem insurmountable. Yet Jesus' command to love our enemies calls us to pray for those who oppose us, to seek understanding, and to trust God's power to heal. Have you ever experienced a moment where love overcame division? Perhaps a family disagreement was resolved through forgiveness, or a strained relationship found restoration through prayer. I, James, would love to hear your stories in the comments. Your experiences can inspire others to walk in Christ's peace. This message also challenges us to pray for global reconciliation, especially in places like Jerusalem, where sacred sites remain flashpoints. The hope of a new humanity encourages us to support communities that model unity, like those where Jewish and Arab Christians worship together, often in gatherings of 50 to 100 people, defying political tensions. As we await Christ's return, we're called to live out this peace now in our hearts and actions. The Abraham Accords, signed in 2020, reflect a step toward this hope, invoking Abraham's legacy to unite nations. Similarly, our faith can unite us across divides, reflecting the love that Christ embodies. If this reflection has stirred your spirit, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more insights into Scripture that deepen our faith and hope. The story of Jesus in Christianity and Islam diverges in fascinating ways, shaping how each faith views peace and reconciliation. Want to explore these differences? Check out the video linked on the screen. It's a must-watch to understand the worldviews that shape our world. Let's continue this journey together, trusting Christ to lead us toward a future where peace prevails.